Good evening, viewers. Welcome to Bharat and Geopolitics. Join us on an insightful journey into the complexities of India-US relations as we delve into the topic of tensions in India-US relations. In this episode, we are honored to welcome our distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Adityanjee. Dr. Adityanjee is the President of Council for Strategic Affairs. He brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to this discussion, from trade disputes to a strategic partnership. The relationship between India and the United States has been both dynamic and intricate. As two of the world's largest democracies, their interactions have far-reaching implications, not only for the region, but also for global geopolitics. In this engaging conversation, we'll explore the root causes of tensions, examine key points of contention, and uncover potential avenues for collaboration. From geopolitical shifts to cultural nuances, we will navigate the multifaceted landscape of India-US relations with our expert guide. Tune in as we unravel the complexities, challenge assumptions, and shed light on the opportunities and challenges in this crucial bilateral relationship. Welcome abroad as we embark on this enlightening journey together. Don't miss out on this enlightening discussion. Stay tuned for a thought-provoking explorations, tensions in India-US relations only on Bharat and Geopolitics. Welcome, Dr. Adityanjee. Welcome to Creative Sagittarius.
Welcome, Mr. Sinha. Pleased to be back again and continue with the discussion on India-US relationship.
Thank you so much, sir. So I am moving to my next questions. Do American comments on Indian internal matters reflect a broader geopolitical interest or ideological agendas? So what's
Yes, definitely. And again, as I said, that commenting upon internal affairs of any country is a innate behavior pattern of United States because it thinks it governs as the superpower the Committee of Nations. So they have no qualms in making comments on internal affairs of any country, India included. That's the reality. And we need to learn that reality and deal with it accordingly. We cannot be perturbed by it unduly. Sometimes we should act upon it in an appropriate manner. Other times we should ignore it. It depends upon the situation. Broadly speaking, geopolitical influences have been there since 1947 onwards in India-US relationship. We know that. During Cold War, America was not with India. America had problems with India's policy of non-alignment, whether that was good or not so good or not so bad. That is a different issue. Fact of the matter is that United States helped India's immediate adversary, Pakistan, in a major way. Transferred arms that were used against India, not once, more than once. Gave help to India's adversary in United Nations Security Council, more than once. Continued to question India's stand on Jammu and Kashmir, and inadvertently or deliberately supported Pakistan's point of view. Those are the realities. It is also true that in last 20-25 years, India-US relationship has improved, despite their internal criticism. It is also true that whenever the administration changes, there is a new tone adopted. So generally, the impression is that whenever there's a Democrat administration, there's much more trenchant criticism of India by biased ideologues, leftist ideologues, or communist ideologues.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. In United States, there was a president, one-term president, who was considered actually a softie, a dove, Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
When Jimmy Carter made a visit to India, official visit to India in 1979, Janata Party government was in power. Morarji Desai was the prime minister, and there were some deliberations about India's signatures on nuclear non-proliferation treaty, which Morarji Desai refused, rightly, because India's point of view was that it is a discriminatory treaty.
Yeah, it is.
And Morarji Desai was not a nuclear hawk, but he refused to consider the demand by President Carter. What happened after that? Carter told his officials at the end of the visit, write cold and blunt letter. And it was not highlighted by Indian press, it was highlighted by international press when this was picked up. So, yes, United States will criticize India's internal policies because it does not suit with their own policies. They would like India to be a vassal state,
Yeah.
being a superpower. And of course, India is not going to agree to that. So despite improvement in bilateral relationship over last 20, 25 years, there will be issues where there will be disagreements. Sometimes we have to take a much more cold, calculated view of the relationship and not get seduced by the idea of the relationship itself. For India, Indians and Indian government, the most important thing is India's strategic interests, whether they are being served or not.
Yes.
Not how good is the relationship.
Yes.
So using hyperbole like the oldest democracy and the largest democracy have to work together, or we are the natural allies, I think this is all hogwash. We should not be, using these emotional terms. Each country is for its own geopolitical interests, so should India be.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the articles I had initially written in 2005, republished in detail in 2008, I had talked about 5 mantras and 10 commandments of India's relationship. And although they have become dated because of certain issues, but they are still very, very relevant for sustaining a healthy bilateral relationship, a symmetrical relationship as of two equals, not, an ally or a vassal state.
Yeah.
Another time I had actually stated that India-US relationship is akin to two part-time lovers. We are not married together. We are not joined at the hip. India should not be following everything what United States wants India to do.
Yeah.
India is in a different neighborhood. India's geopolitical interests are very different from United States interests. So, yes, there will be internal criticism. Yes, it is motivated, it is biased, it is ideological. It subserves the geopolitical interests of United States, not that of India.
Yeah.
If India had followed the advice of United States government successively, we would have given our territory of Jammu and Kashmir solely to Pakistan just to buy peace. Didn't happen because despite having weak governments, the governments did not actually accede to United States demands in those areas. So again, yes, each country has its own geopolitical interests. Criticism can be biased, but it depends upon the innate strengths of people of one particular country, how they succumb to external pressures or they carry out despite having sanctions. And India was the most sanctioned country by United States at one point in time. There were layers and layers of sanctions, so there's nothing new about it.
So that's good. What role do you think media should play in reporting and contextualizing foreign commentary on Indian internal affairs? Do you think the media is doing what it should have been?
Unfortunately, in India, the media is free and independent of government control, but it has its own monetary interests. There was a time in India, the media was used to be called by a very derogatory term.
Right.
And if I may remind you, it was jute press, because pretty much all the newspapers were owned by industrialists based in Kolkata who had major jute mills. So the socialists in India will call all the media as jute press. And then we have terms like prostitutes.
Yeah.
There's a rationale for that. And I use that example of 1979 Carter visit. Indian media did not want to report it because they were afraid that it will damage the bilateral relationship. It will harm the national interests. So they didn't want to report it. So they indulge in self-censorship. At this point in time, that was history. At this point in time, Indian media is not uniform. As soon as the ownership of a company changes and there's foreign investment, so
Yes.
some people are writing reports based on where they are making money. And it's not just United States that is influencing. There were journalists arrested in New Delhi because they got money from China.
Yeah.
If you read Mitrokin archives, there were a number of journalists who were on payrolls of KGB.
Yeah. In those time, I think that's my opinion. Actually, the government was practically sold out to Soviet Union. Actually, everything was done as per the Soviet wish.
So situation is changing now, but you still have vestiges of those media that will criticize the government of India for taking pro-India stance. There are still some journalists who are, getting pleasure whenever a foreign country or a foreign entity criticizes government of India. So Indian media, despite being free superficially, has its own interests. Sometimes it does not guard the national interests.
Right.
Especially when they make motivated report. I mean, look, there were so many issues that were local issues that were hyped up by Indian media. Any incidents in which there's atrocity on women or marginalized section of the society, that is regrettable, that is condemnable, nobody supports it. But attempt was made to humiliate India and tarnish the image of India internationally by Indian media itself, because they were motivated. They were getting support from sources that did not have nation in mind. They had their own agenda. And this has happened more than once, even more recently, even in last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah. You look at the Ravish Kumar, he has left the NDTV, still he is the same. He's doing the same thing.
And he is one of those who got Raymond Magsaysay Award.
Yeah, that is the actually I sent you a post. I think you must not have read it actually. That was one of the topic I wanted to discuss with you. I learned the history of this Magsaysay Award, how it was created and whom it was given.
So yes, all awards are political. All awards are political, whether it is Nobel Peace Prize. You know who are Indians who got Nobel Peace Prize? Missionary Teresa, Kailash Satyarthi, So all awards have some biases depending upon who is the funder. And those members of Indian media who get foreign awards, they are basically beholden to those foreign entities that are supporting them.
Thank you, sir. So I'm moving to the next question. How do Indian citizens perceive and respond to American commentary on the country's internal affairs? I think we have understood this question because, as you said, Indians are less patriot for various reasons. So I think that doesn't matter to them. Would you like to say something more on this?
I think we need to work on inculcating patriotism in Bharat. That is number one.
Yeah.
We know that a significant section of India's civil society jump at every opportunity in which foreign countries, whether that is United States or whatever, are criticizing government of India on ideological grounds. We have the fault lines. So there is a problem. We need to perceive this as a problem. Yes, every person may not be anti-national, every person may not be carrying out sedition or treason, but sometimes it borders on to that. I'll give you an example. During the 10 years of UPA regime, there was a significant part of media that was covering quote unquote people's agitations. So in Tamil Nadu, there were two people's agitations.
Yeah.
One was against a nuclear power plant. And I think at that time, thousands of people were booked by Dr. Manmohan Singh's government under sedition and treason. Because there was there was foreign money coming out by missionary organizations. And the second thing was an agitation about copper sterlite plant, Vedanta's plant, which was closed.
Yeah.
A lot of hue and cry was made. It went to the courts, and courts in their wisdom closed the plant. But what it led to, it made India a net importer of copper. So sometimes Indian citizens, because of their monetary considerations or less than patriotic reasons or for ideological reasons, have been siding with foreign governments and foreign agencies and working in cahoots with them. You saw what happened in Shaheen Bagh agitation.
Yeah.
I'm using, two different administrations. Both the administrations, although ideologically apart, face the same problem.
Yes.
Farmers' agitation. Now, how many people now will agree that that was just a spontaneous indigenous movement not supported by foreign elements?
No, not at all. They continued for a year.
Yes. So again, it shows you the fault lines in Indian society. And yes, there are some citizens who are beholden to foreign interests. I'm not going to name them, but it becomes very apparent when these kind of activities are carried out. During pandemic time, Wuhan virus pandemic time, there was a very strong section of Indian society that wanted government of India to buy the Pfizer vaccine or J&J vaccine or Moderna vaccine at inflated prices from the West, a technology that was not time tested. And they were at the throat of government of India for focusing on developing a domestic vaccine. I just cannot fathom, the ultimately India was able to tackle the Wuhan virus pandemic with a reasonable degree of success. Yes, there were some mortalities, but you cannot avoid mortalities in a pandemic of a lab-created virus.
Yes.
And ultimately, having your own domestic vaccine with a time-tested technology that India's medical scientists perfected was given free to all the citizens. Government of India did not become debtor to foreign pharmaceutical companies for purchasing vaccines that had never been tried in India. No clinical trials were done in India, and these people wanted actually total indemnity from side effects. And now we see that the side effects of those mRNA vaccines are major. And in fact, I'll give you a very hilarious example. One of these foreign companies, Johnson and Johnson, they were negotiating the vaccine sale to a country in Latin America called Argentina. And in the process of negotiation, they wanted actually military bases in Argentina as part of vaccine sale.
Yeah.
So this tells you, who is working for what. And a significant section of Indian civil society, Indian politicians were critical of government of India. In fact, one regional politician, I won't name the name, said, "Oh, I don't want you to take BJP vaccine. When our government comes, we will develop our own vaccine and get."
Akhilesh Yadav.
Yes. And other ones were talking about why can't government of India purchase Moderna or Pfizer J&J vaccine. The bottom line is that these companies refuse to submit clinical trials.
Yeah.
They refused to do that, and they were not willing to submit all the data. So I'm bringing out these specific examples to show you where the loyalties lie and where is the fault line and what we need to do. We need to build up our own nation, our own society, and inculcate the sense of patriotism that has been lacking because of 1,000 years of slavery by different entities and extraterritorial loyalties of some of the agents of these foreign elements.
Yeah. So far as the pandemic concerned, I think our Indian government performance have been the best in this world actually, in terms of containing the impact of this virus.
We had something called Vaccine Maitri Abhiyan,
Yeah.
under which more than 100 virus vaccine.
Yeah.
And those countries are thankful to India.
Yeah.
Videos of countries like Jamaica, the Prime Minister of Jamaica thanking government of India, or Papua New Guinea, saying that India had no axe to grind. They've helped us when other countries were not willing to help us. Those are the kind of activities that build up nation's international image. And that is what government of India needs to focus on.
Yeah, not only the image, the performance in terms of the domestically containing the effect of the virus and many other countries in both.
That goes without saying. In fact, I'm going to bring you one more example.
Yeah.
A local government, a motivated party, went up to Supreme Court demanding that we are not being given oxygen. And ultimately, this was very, very unfortunate incident. Later on, 1 year, 2 year after the pandemic was under control, it was found that they were artificially inflating the demand 5-fold more than what was the requirement and not providing oxygen when it was needed. What was the motive? It was humanitarian or political. That for every step you were going to the Supreme Court of India, and Supreme Court in its naivete was taking up each and every petition as it was the gospel truth. That is the reality I'm talking about. So when we talk about bilateral relations with foreign governments, you need to take these factors into consideration.
Thank you. So my next question is, sorry, can international dialogue on Indian internal matters contribute positively to domestic reform or change? Is there any constructive impact of such comments on the India domestic policy?
With whom? If you have to have dialogue with your foreign interlocutors with other countries, you know that they are coming from an ideological or geopolitical perspective. They are trying to grind their own eggs. And as far as domestic audience is concerned, the government is always doing dialogue with domestic constituencies. Government of the day, does not matter which party, always has dialogue with its own internal people. What is not acceptable that the dialogue between the government and its people be predicated upon foreign interference, foreign critique. There's always scope for improvement. There is always scope for reform, but that should be internally driven, not externally driven.
Yeah, yes, yes. So with this, I am moving to my last question for this session. What lesson can be drawn from the past instances of foreign involvement in India internal matters?
Well, lessons are that India needs to devise its own solutions in Indian context by Indians, by Indian citizens, by government of India, by Indian institutions. That's the lesson. You have to be self-reliant, you have to be Atmanirbhar. Half-baked solutions that are cooked in some think tank in a Western country are not going to help India. I will bring something that is going on the Twitter and social media about how attempts were made by the Western governments by supporting the technology for gender-specific sex selection in India using modern technologies and then gender-selective abortions to reduce the number of girl child born. And that is something people may say is coming from basically too convoluted kind of conspiracy theory or something like that. But when I read about it, even institutions like All India Institute of Medical Sciences, where I trained, I did my medical studies, were involved in this process, whether knowingly or unknowingly. That parents were allowed to choose the child they would keep by initially doing amniocentesis to determine the sex of the fetus, and subsequently they were selling ultrasound machines. So by an ultrasound, you would be able to find out the sex of the fetus and do gender select. It led to change in gender ratios in states like Punjab and Haryana to a major extent.
When this is not allowed under law.
Now it is not allowed under law, but at that time they were not those laws. I'm talking about late 60s, early 70s and 80s.
Okay, okay.
So understand that is what there is a member of Niti Aayog, Sanjeev Sanyal, who has written about it. And, so everything coming from West is not necessarily in India's interest. these countries were trying to, they had a racist agenda because the white Anglo-Saxon populations were declining and fertility rates in countries like India were high. They were always apprehensive that brown people will take over the earth. And I mean, it looks very ludicrous as a conspiracy theory, but that is true. That they tried to control the fertility by reducing number of childbearing age, females being born. So sex-selective abortions led to decline in number of girl children being born in India, to the extent that there was time like in Haryana, the ratio was 931 girl children to 1,000 boys. And now that has changed after change in laws. Even physicians and gynecologists and doctors got involved in this process, got duped. It was a very seductive idea that parents can decide, how many children they want and whether they want a girl child or a boy child. And it is shameful that institutions like All India Institute of Medical Sciences participated in this foreign-inspired charade of affecting future of India.
But that time was different, actually. That
Time was different, but you're talking about lessons. You already learn lessons from history.
Yeah.
You don't learn lessons from what you're doing right now. You learn from the lessons of history.
Yeah.
And those who don't learn from lessons of history are condemned to repeat it, if I may cite George Santayana. So there is a scope for learning. I am citing these examples just to tell you how Indians in post-1947 generation were seduced by foreign concepts. And rather than finding local solutions in local context, government in a major way decided to rely on Western sources of information, knowledge, wisdom, and burnt their fingers.
So thank you, Dr. Adityanjee. Thank you so much. And that was the last question. So we have our key takeaway for the first session. Just ignore America. That is the one strategy. Otherwise, start commenting on American governance, the way they deal with their democracy.
I would qualify that. I would make a qualifying statement that last 25 years, India-US relationship has improved. It has improved despite changes in governments in both the countries. The contours of relationships are sometimes dependent upon the ideological moorings of the government, whether in India or in United States. But overall, the relationship has improved. It does not mean that India will become a clone of United States. It does not mean that India should agree to everything that United States demands. The relationship should be of two equals. There will always be some tensions because the geopolitical interests are different. And India should not use US approval as the litmus test of positivity of relationship or correct course for India. Correct course for India will be decided by Indians, Indian citizens, Indian government, Indian institutions, not by foreigners sitting in Washington, DC or London or Moscow or Beijing for that matter. And that is not just true of United States, but any other country. A strong, resurgent, shining India needs to have self-confidence, give up the colonial baggage, decolonize its thinking, and approach the international arena from the strength of her own achievements, her own glorious past and knowledge and understanding based upon the current experience as well as the past. That's the only way for the nation to move forward and deal in the global arena with confidence.
Though our relationship have improved, but should India forget what US has done to India in the past?
Never forget, but be pragmatic to deal with the reality. Never forget, but make sure that similar behaviors are not repeated. And it is possible. It is possible. You have to safeguard very zealously your own interests, your own geopolitical interests.
Thank you. So a few more takeaways that Adityanjee has highlighted. The American comments have greater geopolitical interests. That's one thing. The Indian media is not doing what it should have been doing. So that is another thing. And Indian citizens are less patriotic. Even I was of the opinion, and he has endorsed my opinion.
I will qualify that by saying some Indian citizens, not all.
Not all. Not all, because we have a diverse population here. So we are not pointing finger to everyone, but in general. So the in general public don't care about what the American comments are. And the final lessons are India needs to devise its own solutions. So being self-reliant is the only solution that India should have. So with this, I am coming to end of this session. Thank you for joining us. Heartfelt thank to you, to our esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Adityanjee, for sharing your invaluable insights and expertise on tensions in India-US relations. Your contribution has truly enriched our conversation and provided our listeners with a deeper understanding of this complex topic. To all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Your support and engagement drive us to continue delivering enriching content. Don't forget to subscribe to Bharat and Geopolitics for more thought-provoking discussions on international relations, geopolitics, and global issues. Help us spread the word by sharing this episode with your friends, family, and colleagues. Together, let's foster informed dialogue, promote understanding of the world around us. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep watching Bharat and Geopolitics. So thank you so much, Dr. Adityanjee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Sinha. It was a pleasure. There are other issues also in bilateral relationship. United States keep on doing freedom of navigation operations in India's near waters kind of thing without giving any prior notice. Again, on pandemic, United States